All right, how's it going, everybody? Today we are going to take a look at the IDs for your upper extremity muscles. So basically, my plan is to go top to bottom through the upper extremity muscle list that you can find on Sakai. So if we go over here, you can see in the resources tab, go to lab resources, down here, 11 and 12 upper extremity muscles, and then upper extremity muscle list, you'll find it right here. So we'll start with the trapezius upper fibers. So this video is going to be more of just a walkthrough, um, a rundown of all the muscles, just the IDs. I'll talk a little bit about origin insertion, but just more talking about how the origin insertion can help you identify what muscle you're looking at, not necessarily trying to identify the origin insertion just yet. That'll be a different video. But all right, so we'll start with the trapezius. So the trapezius is going to be this highlighted muscle right here, and it's going to be made up of 3 different fibers. So you have your upper fibers, which will be coming up from the top, kind of swooping down towards the spine of the scapula right here. Your middle fibers, which run horizontally straight across to that spine of the scapula. And then the lower fibers, which come down from the bottom and up towards the spine of the scapula. So that's how you can tell the difference between the upper fibers, the middle fibers, and the lower fibers. So that'll be your trapezius. Moving on to levator scapula. If we hide our trapezius, we'll get a better view of levator scap, which will be this muscle right here, levator scapula, kind of coming off of your superior angle of the scapula, which you can see right here, and up and towards your neck. So that guy will be levator scapula. You can see it without taking the trapezius away, but it's a little more difficult on this side, as you can see. But a real good view will be without the trapezius right here, levator scap. All right, again, moving to another deep muscle underneath your trapezius is going to be your rhomboideus minor and your rhomboideus major. So with the rhomboids, we'll be seeing that the minor, rhomboideus minor, is going to be above rhomboideus major. So minor above major. And you can tell the difference pretty easily. The rhomboideus major is obviously much bigger than your rhomboideus minor right here. But again, rhomboideus minor is above rhomboideus major. All right, moving on to the next muscle. Move on to serratus anterior, which is going to be this muscle right underneath here. So it'll be a little bit deeper, underneath your pectoralis right here and a little bit of your shoulder and everything. But these are these finger-like muscles that come around from the back towards the front here. So yeah, serratus anterior. Some people call it your boxer's muscle. So if you look at a lot of good boxers, they have a really well-defined serratus anterior, kind of coming around from the front here. All right, then we'll take a look at pectoralis minor. So we'll talk about this later, but on top here is your pectoralis major, which has 3 heads. But if we hide these, you'll see underneath we have this guy coming off of your ribs here, and this will be your pectoralis minor. It's coming off the ribs and up towards the shoulder here, sitting right underneath your pectoralis major. All right, if we move on to the next muscle, this will be subclavius. And so as the name kind of describes, you can kind of find subclavius by finding your clavicle right here. And then you'll find subclavius located right underneath it right there. So subclavius or below the clavicle. So you can see it underneath here, or from the side here, you can see it running right underneath your clavicle, subclavius. All right, so if we move back, back towards the back, um, we'll move on to our next muscle, which will be a really big muscle, makes up the majority of your back, or covers up the majority of your back, which will be latissimus dorsi or latissimus dorsi. It's this huge muscle, kind of comes down from your hips, covers you almost your entire back, and goes up into your shoulder right there. So this will be latissimus dorsi. All right, and then if we look a little deeper, so underneath latissimus dorsi, we'll get a better view of your Teres Major. So Teres Major is going to be this guy connecting to that inferior angle of your scapula. This will be Teres Major, this muscle right here. And then if we skip a couple on the list, which we'll come back to, supraspinatus and infraspinatus, we'll come back to those ones, and look at Teres Minor, we'll find it located right above your Teres Major. So again, just like with the rhomboids, rhomboideus minor above rhomboideus major, you'll have, again, Teres Minor above Teres Major. So those two guys right there. All right. So if we hide some of this shoulder here, we'll get a better view of some more of our rotator cuff muscles. So we already named one of them, which would be your Teres Minor. It's a rotator cuff. And then you'll have 3 more rotator cuff muscles. 2 more of them are going to externally rotate, and one of them is going to internally rotate on the anterior side. We'll take a look at it. So on the back here, you can see supraspinatus, which is going to be easily identifiable if you know where your supraspinous fossa is. So if we remember from our scapula landmarks, our supraspinous fossa is going to be sitting right on top of the spine of the scapula here, and that's where you'll find your supraspinatus. So supraspinatus in the supraspinous fossa. And similarly, you'll have your infraspinatus in your infraspinous fossa. So again, below the spine here, you'll find infraspinatus. So those 3 rotator cuff muscles, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, and Teres Minor, you'll find on the back of the scapula, on the posterior side, and then on the anterior side. We hide this guy right here. It's a little bit more difficult to see, but we'll find our subscapularis. So if we zoom in, you can see hidden back here is subscapularis. So again, similar to the supraspinatus and infraspinatus, being in the supraspinous fossa, the infraspinous fossa, the subscapularis will be found in the subscapular fossa of your scapula. So again, from our landmarks, you remember that the subscapular fossa is on the anterior side of the scapula, and that's where you will find subscapularis kind of coming across here and then onto the shoulder right there. Okay. Now we'll take a look at our triceps. So the triceps are going to be on the posterior side of our upper arm, and the triceps will have 3 heads. So tri for 3 heads. So first we'll take a look at the long head, which is going to be the biggest one right here, also located a little more medially. This will be our triceps long head right here, coming down from the elbow and all the way up into our shoulder joint. Then we can look at our triceps lateral head. It's going to be right next to the long head, or lateral to the long head. You'll find your triceps lateral head, which again goes from the elbow, but this time all the way, not all the way up into the shoulder joint, but only up onto the humerus here. And then finally, your final triceps head is going to be this guy located underneath your long head and your lateral head. You'll find your triceps medial head right underneath here. All right. To move on to our deltoids. So we'll move on to this side right here. So the deltoids are going to be pretty much just what you think of as your shoulder muscles, this big cap here on top of your upper arm. So the deltoid is going to have three portions, just like your triceps. But this time we'll have an anterior portion or an anterior head, a middle head, and then a posterior head. So pretty intuitive. Anterior on the anterior side, posterior on the posterior side, and middle in between the two. And then we'll move on to our biceps. So if our triceps have three heads, then our biceps will have two heads. The biceps will be made up of the long head and the short head. So the long head is going to be more lateral. So long head would be lateral. It's going to come down from your elbow and up into the shoulder joint, just like when we talked about our triceps long head. And then right next to it, or medial from it, or medial to it, you'll find your biceps short head. So again, this guy highlighted right there. All right, and then if we look at some muscles found underneath, we'll take a look at our coracobrachialis. Our coracobrachialis, this one I like to identify by looking at its origin here. You can see that it originates at the coracoid process of the scapula. So right up here, this is your coracobrachialis, and you can see it attaches right onto that coracoid process. And so that's what will be called your coracobrachialis. So this guy underneath right here. And then we'll take a look at that muscle we mentioned earlier, your pectoralis major. This guy's going to have three heads as well. You don't necessarily need to identify each of them, but just remember that this big combination of these three heads is going to be your pectoralis major, big muscle on the front right here. You'll have your clavicular head, sternal head, your sternocostal head, and your abdominal head. So these three together make up your pectoralis major. All right, and then to finish off the upper arm, we'll take a look at a couple more muscles here. So if you remember, we hid our biceps on the arm right here. So if we take a look at underneath those, you'll find your brachialis. So this muscle kind of hides underneath your biceps brachii. So if we look at this side, here's your bicep short head and your long head, and then underneath it here is the brachialis on the side of the arm right there. So here it is on this side, the brachialis. And then we'll take a look at one more. Take a look at brachioradialis. So this guy would be brachioradialis. Technically one of your lower arm muscles or forearm muscles, but we'll include it in this section because it acts on the elbow joint here. So brachioradialis all the way down from your wrist all the way up into and across the elbow joint here. So brachioradialis kind of comes up and across and sits right underneath your brachialis here. All right, so that will do it for at least the upper arm, upper extremity muscles. And then we'll come back for a separate video on your forearm muscles. So go back through, maybe you can put the video on mute. And as I point through each of the muscles, try and say it to yourself, go through it a couple times, really get these IDs down, which will be super helpful for when you start to memorize your origin insertion and your innervations and the actions as well. So yeah, that'll do it. Hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.